Yeah, I'm actually very encouraged by what I see with with younger folks, particularly younger men. I think there's a kind of I think people can misread some of the signs. So I've been a landlord since 1994, so I've had lots of tenants, and I've looked at lots of credit reports, and I've looked at lots of. I've got tenants right now, and one of the things, by the way, all of my tenants right now are guys, um, single guys actually, and one of the reasons why is because the girls are in such a terrible way when it comes to debt.
Hmm.
Um, so sometimes people, this is what I mean by misreading the signs. So sometimes people will say, well, look at what's happening in college education. Look at the imbalance in favor of women. Well, what
Huh.
they fail to do is look a little deeper. Why are all those girls in school? Because they want to be involved in healthcare and education, and the bureaucracies in those
Hmm.
areas are requiring them to pursue a college degree.
Hmm.
Those are like that's what they have to get. So they come out of school with $40,000 of debt, and they're going to be working in a kindergarten making $35,000 a year. And many of these girls don't have fathers who are looking after their interests, and they're afraid of maybe finding themselves with a car that breaks down because it's not new, so they end up buying a new car, and they got that debt. And I tell you what, when I look at these girls and I see their credit reports and they're just terrible, I'm evaluating the situation very differently. I think a lot of young men are like, okay, uh, the educational bureaucracy has been more or less fleecing us for the longest time, and what we need to do is we need to think about what's in my best interest. And so I see a lot of guys turning away from higher education, and I don't think that's a bad sign. I actually think it's a reality check. I think it's kind of an indicator that, and I understand higher education very well. I've been a college professor. I was the vice president of the Academy of Philosophy and Letters, for goodness sake. I'm on the board of a college. I understand higher education probably better than 99% of America. And but I tell you what, it's a bubble, and
Yeah.
there is. I think young men are an indicator that there's a tremendous transition that's occurring, and these girls are being taken advantage of. They're not the cutting edge. The future is not female. It's the
Hmm.
future is what it's always been, and these girls are making themselves actually un sort of marriageable.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, somebody needs to tell these girls the truth, and they're not getting it from their guidance counselors.
Hmm.
Chris, on that front, I have a younger cousin, first cousin, a little bit older than Noah. Graduated high school, started loading UPS trucks, became a manager at a John Dealer dealership, did finish a 4-year degree, and has gotten old enough now that this long term girlfriend, they've been together for like 6 years. It was Fisher cut bait time. And he decided she was like 60 something $1,000 in debt.
I've seen it. I've seen it.
And he said, I just cannot do that.
Right.
Hmm.
And so 6 years of relationship was gone
Yep.
because he was a young man who knew economic realities, having worked his way through life thus far,
Yep.
and made that choice. That's a pretty profound insight you've offered there, and it makes sense of some stuff I'm seeing.
Hmm. What would you say, and all of you are welcome to chime in on this, what would you say is sort of the solution to that problem? Mostly because there's probably going to be single young ladies who watch this and they're going to think, what else am I supposed to do, in a way? Because typically, if they're wanting to potentially have a husband who's maybe a provider one day, a lot of these women feel like they have to take care of themselves until that point. Or on the flip side, some of these women don't want a provider, and so they feel like this degree is how they're going to take care of themselves. So what kind of solutions do you guys see for these women in particular, to where they can maybe get the advice early on enough to where they don't follow that same path, or if they're on that path, start course correcting now, but doing so in a way where they're still taken care of if, Prince Charming doesn't come around for 5, 10 years.
Yeah, I have a daughter who's married, and we talked about these things a lot. Um, she is very bright. She scored in the top 1% in the SAT on both the math and the language. She could have gone anywhere to school, but she wanted to be a mother. She wanted to be a housewife. And I said, sweetie, the kind of guy that you're going to need to marry isn't going to be found in Sunday school. You're going to have to go to elite college, and and that's where you're going to find him. And that's what happened. But she was open to my direction, and I'm standing behind her, and we're, financially committed to her welfare. And she ended up marrying a guy who's probably going to become a college professor himself. But anyway, I think that this is where fathers have to be very proactive in terms of looking after the welfare of their daughters. Um, we cannot trust corporate America to give our children good guidance, in particular our daughters. They have zero interest in the long-term welfare of our daughters as women. They're interested primarily in just filling slots in their big corporate structure, and they'll tell the girls everything they want to hear about, how important they are, and about, their rights and all that kind of stuff. But it's entirely mercenary. It's not what the girls think it is. These people are not on their side. So, we need to have strong, healthy, good relationships with our daughters so that we can help them navigate that stuff.
Well, you're tapping into some of my anxieties as a pastor. I'm a Calvinist, but I still have anxieties. If you see did y'all see the chart that was going around? I think WAPO showed red line boys and their political commitments.
Yes.
Blue line girls.
Single women are pushing the button for Democrat. Like, what is it? At least 60% or higher. It might be significantly higher than that. Yeah.
And no, I'd love to know what you see on the ground. So I checked with a guy who I'm friends with who is a campus minister internship. And he was like, yeah, man, that's what we're seeing. So you've got these guys who are seeing through, I think, in some of the same ways that Mr. Wiley is referring to, who are they going to marry? And, he talked about how, like, women are sold this bill of goods. What they're sold is you can be autonomous. They're not ever going to be autonomous. They're going to be wards of the state. But the basically woke HR and government education is going to give them a secular family by which to exercise the tyrannies of unchecked feminism on the world around them. And historically, getting married and having kids is the great, I'm going to say humanizer. I don't think you have to be conservative to be a human, but the overlap's higher. Well, what takes a progressive kid and turns them into a conservative adult? Well, traditionally, it's marriage. And so I'm looking at these young men, I'm looking at these young ladies, the way their worldviews are diverging. And I'm wondering who's going to rescue the girls by putting a ring on their finger. The state is very willing to, and these guys want to be married. You're saying go to college and get an MS degree. I don't know how, other than the local church, and like nearly prearranged marriages with like-minded families.
Yeah, I think
guys are going to find a spouse.
Well, a lot of guys, I think, will end up turning to, those locations where traditional girls can still be found, and there are lots of them out there. They just happen to be outside the United States.
Oh,
and
okay.
so I anticipate a huge surge of interest, and I think it's already happening. Marrying girls from the Philippines or Ukraine or whatever.
Interesting. Yeah, I've heard some of that. I didn't think about it, though.
Yeah, well, the girls basically who have, drunk the Kool-Aid and this stuff, all they need to do is look at women in their 50s who did the exact same thing and see that they are completely alone and living with their cats. And I'm not exaggerating it at all. I mean, I know many women like this, and they're not happy. They're not the captains of industry that they thought they'd be. They're still working in some cubicle somewhere, doing mindless stuff and gossiping on the side about other people in the office and that kind of stuff. That's basically their lives, and they're childless. And so, you know, the women that I know who are content tend to be very traditional in character, and I think that's always going to be the case. I just think that fathers in particular have to have the hearts of their girls, is because we are the ones who will be the reality check for them. They'll trust us if we have the right kind of relationship with the daughters. If they know that we love them and they trust our judgment.